everyone, it's Marcy and Chunk again from Chunky Knitted Creations. Today I'm going to show you how to make something really cool. It's called a bed runner, just like the one in the picture. And we are going to be using, of course, my brand new yarn that I just launched on Amazon. This is my medium gray color, very soft, plush, chunky chenille yarn. Bed runners are a great accent for pretty much any style of bedroom. You can make them in multiple colors. You can use the regular knit stitch, which is what we're going to use today. You can use the herringbone stitch, however you want. So they're pretty simple to make. Depending on the size that you want, you go by the width of the bed, which if you look up standard bed measurements, they're all either 75 or 80 inches. And you want them to hang over about 9 inches on the side. I mean, depending on preference, if you want them to be the length of your comforter or whether you want them to come to the floor, but generally they hang over about 9 inches on each side of the bed. So let's get started. Get your scissors, get your lighter, because we're going to be using the burn method to join our skeins, and we are going to have a ball. Okay, let's get started on our bed runner. So just like making a blanket, but smaller in width and a whole lot longer. So just, if you watch my beginner tutorial for a beginner blanket tutorial, it's going to be basically the same unless you do a different stitch. But we're going to do the knit stitch because it's the most common. So you're going to take your yarn. I always unwind my yarn and let it sit for a little bit so it fluffs up. I mean, like a big luxurious fluffy pile, and let it air out, because sometimes yarn can smell a little bit from traveling, even if it's been washed. I always have my manufacturer pre-wash my yarn, but just sometimes from being on the boat or the plane, it can get a little bit of an odor to it, so I just let it air out for a little bit and that's fine. Okay, so the first one I made of these, I did a king size, and the standard size for a bed runner is 24 inches wide. I did 18 cast on stitches and it came to exactly 24 inches, and it expands a little bit if you do the big cast on stitches that I always talk about. So it did expand to about 27, which my customer didn't care at all, but I wanted it to be exactly 24 inches. So we're going to do 17 this time, and then it should come out to exactly 24 inches. So basic slip knot, take this, cross it over, make it look like a ribbon. All right, bring your working yarn over here. Let's do this again. Cross it over. You really don't need much of a tail here. Flip this, pull your yarn through the hole, your working yarn. Pull out and turn sideways so that you get a pretzel. Okay, do it again. We want these to be 3 finger widths. Okay, so that it has room to expand as you knit. Okay, pull it through again. Grab your working yarn, pull through the hole, make sure it's 3. This is easier than measuring each loop, I feel like. I like to just use my fingers because I don't think they're going to grow anymore at my age. So 3. Straighten it out a little bit. Pull through again. There we go. Keep your working yarn over in front of you. Helps a lot. I usually count as I go, but I lose track and end up having to go back and count again. Especially when you're doing a big blanket with like 30 or 40 cast on stitches. Show you 4. Again, this is going to be just like a blanket, but skinny and long, and it'll look like the one in the picture that I'm posting. Okay, let's see where we're at so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I said 17 we're going to do. 12, 13, from the back. Always pull through from the back. There we go. Keep in mind when you get your yarn too that making yarn, they make it in such huge batches that sometimes you can get these thin spots like that. If it really bothers you, they're usually only about that long, and it just has to do with the way they tie it down to compress it when they're dyeing it too. Okay, let's see, that should be 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 7. That was kind of big. And 17. Okay. And when you flip it over just like your blanket, sometimes I can knit. We're always gonna knit the bumps on the back. Sometimes I can get the first one to knit without this falling out, my end stitch, and if I can't, then that means I'm going to need one more. So again, I got lucky and it's gonna hold. So now I like mine not too tight. I'm more of a loose knitter, so I do about 2 finger lengths, or two, to where I can fit 2 fingers through the hole when I'm pulling through my stitches now. Pull through the back. Okay. Find that little knot right there. Pull your stitches through. Just let these ones stand up. Measure them against each other to make sure they all look the same height. Okay. Or if you're more comfortable, just keep a ruler next to you, measuring tape, and measure each one of them until you get the hang of it. I know people that have been knitting for years that still prefer to use their measuring tape. I think sometimes we are our own worst critics when it comes to our blankets. We forget that this is just something that people are going to cover up with. And when we do it, we think of it as a piece of art, a picture that we're painting. And when it's done, we want it perfectly square. We want every stitch knitted to perfection because it's our work. So when I get done, if I find little mistakes that I can see, I always have somebody else look at my blanket and ask them, somebody that doesn't knit, and ask them, what do you think of this? Do you see anything wrong? And 99% of the time they don't. So that reassures me that I don't need to take it apart and redo it all over again, and reminds me that it's a blanket. It's a piece of art to me because I worked hard on it, but it is just a blanket. I do talk a lot when I knit. I'm sorry. You can mute me and just watch. Alright. Always count my stitches again to make sure I've got 18. Or 17, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, including my end stitch. So, again, just like knitting a blanket, we're going to flip it over. The first time, I don't skip my end stitch for the first row. Or, I'm sorry, second row when I flip it over. But then after that, I don't knit this one twice, as in for going this way and for going that way. I knit it when I'm going this way, and then when I start my new row, I don't knit that one again, so that we can get that nice border that we have on the bottom all the way around. Same thing on the other end. Alright. Okay, I'll do a few more rows with you, so you can just get an idea of the width of one of these. These, like the first one I did, and this I did in a nice hunter green color, which I will be releasing soon, hopefully. And I really, really loved it. But this one is going to be for my daughter's room. And she's got a white comforter and her walls are gray, so I wanted to do a gray one for some accent color. Flatten them out. Pull through. So I usually measure my 2 finger holes on my first stitch when I've got them laying flat, and then after that I just compare them next to each other so I don't have to stick my fingers in the holes and I can knit faster. Always make sure your stitches are close next to each other because you don't want a big gap right here. It'll look all wonky. Pull that through. See, they all look the same height. Make our blanket nice and uniform. I know I said grab your layer and I'm going to show you the burn method, but I already did show you that in the first one. And it doesn't change, and it's going to be quite a while before I'm going to need to join skeins together. And don't feel bad if you don't like the burn method. There's people out there that just don't like it at all. They don't like the fact of burning yarn. And some people just can't get the hang of it. You really got to make sure that when you join the 2 pieces, you massage that ball really, really well. So a really good thing to do is get yourself a small handheld sewing machine. And see, with this end, I do skip the end stitch the first time. I only knit it once going this way, and then when I start to come back that way, I don't, because it's just shaped different from coming up sideways, so you really don't need to. Anyway, so if you want to sew, one of those little battery operated handheld sewing machines that you can get on Amazon work really great. You can have it sitting there when you join your next skein. You can just sew the 2 pieces together, and then you know it's not going nowhere. I really do not recommend tying them in knots. Some people don't have a problem with it and they do it all the time, but I've done 2 blankets when I first started out because the person that taught did the tutorial only did knotting, and she would just tie her 2 skeins together, and so I did mine that way. And I had the blanket for a little while and it needed to be washed, so I washed it in delicate cycle on cold water, laid it flat to dry, put it back on the couch. We started using it again, and I noticed all the ends were falling apart where I had tied them together. So I thought maybe it's because it was my first one. So I made another blanket, tied them, made sure, double knotted it, made it secure, and lo and behold, same thing happened again. So I told myself once I saw the burn method and I got good at it and I washed those blankets and they were fine, I would never ever do that again. Alright, so now I'm back over here on this end stitch. It's already kind of turning in a little bit. If you don't skip this, sometimes if you just knit it the right way and knit it tight, it will turn in for you. But alright, so I knitted it once for going this way, and now I'm going, oh, I'm so sorry. Now I'm going to skip it. I'm not going to knit it for this row. So it will have one less on it than the others. Okay. I should have showed you the before and after on the yarn before, when you first, my yarn is compressed because for storage fees, so I have to compress it. So when you first get it and you open the package, it doesn't look as fluffy. But just before you use it, I mean, I recommend keeping it in the vacuum seal package until you're ready to use it, because it's going to take up a lot less room. And they're clear polyseal bags, so you can't even, I mean, you can see the colors through them, and it's going to save a lot of room for your yarn storage if you buy a lot like I do. But when you open them, it's packed down a little bit, but it only takes about 2 hours at the most usually. I mean, I sometimes will leave mine open overnight and just let it sit, and it will fluff up like this. Or you can just knit with it and the blanket itself will fluff up. If you knit extremely tight, it might not have as much room to fluff, but I don't knit very tight, as you can see. I like mine to look more like just a loose knit blanket. A lot of my customers have recommended that I do that for theirs too. Alright, so we're on this end here. Okay, this is going to be a quick tutorial. Alright, as you can see, this is about how wide you're going to want your bed runner to be. It should measure 24 inches. As you go, it might start out a little bit different and a little smaller, and then it will expand probably 2 to 3 inches as you go, depending on how tightly you knit. So I just did 4 rows for you just to show you that it's just like making a blanket. And when you get to the length that you want, you can knit it as long as you want. I recommend about 9 inches of hangover on the side. If you get it to where it hangs over too much, it could stretch out a little bit. So if you're okay with it getting a little longer, that's fine. But chunky yarn does stretch, especially if you make a scarf or something with pockets and your hands are in it all the time. I've had a scarf stretch about 10 to 12 inches on me, so where it now comes down to my knees and I can't use it anymore. So just finish this, just keep knitting to the length that you want. You can change colors if you want, and then just do the cast off the same exact way that I showed you in my beginner blanket tutorial. So I hope you make a lot of these. They're a very good selling item for me. My customers really love them. And again, links in the comments for my Chunky Chenille yarn by Chunky Knitted Creations on Amazon. And just let me know if you have any questions, and come to our Facebook group, Chunky Yarn Blanketeers. And once you get in there, you can ask me questions, and all my top knitters are there also. And there will be more tutorials there from other group members. So we don't have just what I have on my channel. Some of my other group members that are experienced knitters have also loaned us some of their expertise and posted some tutorials on how to make plushies and lots of other things, and we're constantly adding more. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have a ball.